broadcast news from 1987, directed by James L. Brooks, starring Holly Hunter, William Hurt, Albert Brooks. With logline, take two rival television reporters, one handsome, one talented, both male, and one producer, female, mix well and watch the sparks fly. Huh. Interesting logline. I have not seen loglines written like this before on IMDb.
Yeah, that sounds like it's the movie poster, doesn't it? Or like something that a narrator would say in the trailer. In a world.
In a world, yeah, very marketing-y.
Yeah.
As somebody who grew up watching and loving a lot of romantic comedies and romances and comedies in general, I came into watching this movie with those expectations initially. And those expectations were not initially met at all, because I was trying to force that expectation onto this movie, only to realize that, oh, this is actually really real. And these characters have a lot of baggage and drama. And these are driven people who are challenged by themselves, but also each other. And yes, it's a romantic comedy. I suppose you could classify it in that fashion, but
Yeah, maybe.
but it's actually a very true life portrayal of relationships and also what work means to us and how work defines us and how workplaces define our relationships. So it took a little bit for me to warm up to this movie, only to now say that I think this might be, for me, one of the perfect movies that exist. And it's sort of in that pantheon of movies that I think of, especially my kind of movies, which are about relationships and people and places and how people wrestle against each other, all of that. And this is a seminal movie for me in that sense. But yeah, curious if you'd watched this before, and if so, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I saw this for the first time. There was in college or right after college, just knowing that this is a not only like a popular film, but a revered film from the 80s. And I was like, okay, I'll rent it Netflix DVD by mail, and remembered being really impressed with what it was and really drawn into it. Actually, I hadn't seen it since then. And on this rewatch, it didn't hit me as much as it did the first time. Like it fell a little bit in my eyes on this viewing, but I still think the movie is fantastic at what it's doing, because it does come with a lot of the trappings of, like you said, a romantic comedy, but there's so much more in this in terms of scope too. Like I love the beginning where it starts with each of them as children, and you can see, oh, okay, well, the little girl is definitely acting like a producer, so that makes sense that she goes off and is a producer, and the attractive anchor is just the dumb cute kid who's not smart, and you can tell he's going to be the one getting by through his looks. And similarly with the other reporter too, like he's sort of a nerd basically, for lack of a better word. And then you track him through, then there's this time period where you see what's going on in their lives. And then I love the coda at the end too, where you sort of flash forward and realize, yeah, these people went and lived their lives in the way that they wanted to, and they're all happy in their own ways. It's like it's a nice sort of arc of someone's life where you're doing snapshots at the beginning and the end. And then there's sort of this period where it probably takes place over a couple weeks or months, maybe the actual meat of the film. I love that they're able to say so much about these people and and their lives using that structure. I just find great. And the performances of all three of them are just so fantastic.
Oh my gosh. I mean, all three of them, but really James Brooks's writing and the way this movie is put together, that I mean, there's so much to unpack here, right? Like I've come very close to putting this movie in a bunch of work ethic or work related, podcast episodes that we've done, but I restrained from that because I just felt like this movie deserved like a special mention. But that whole dimension of work and how work fuels people and how work is shown the day to day, it's like an action movie to me, when Joan Cusack is like literally running over things to deliver the video footage, and just the joy of putting that together and the excitement of it all of that is captured amazingly. But then you kind of go one layer deeper, then it's about the ethics of the work that you do and what is a good story and who to believe and who not to. And I love that the movie subverts that. Like in the beginning, like you were saying, the cute, good-looking guy. You think that he's good for nothing, but actually it turns out he is actually very good at what he does.
Oh
And
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I love that there isn't this kind of, black or white thing to this movie in any shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
Like Albert Brooks's character, who's the good friend, who's supportive and there, and she trusts him. He's kind of an a-hole as well.
Oh, he treats her
And
terribly in
he's so
several scenes
terrible. He is
in this
very
movie. Yeah.
selfish and
Yeah. Yeah.
and such. Meanwhile, William Hurt's character, who, yeah, it's a little bit oily and not truthful. At the same time, he knows exactly what the audience wants, and
Right.
his love for Holly Hunter's character is genuine. He
Mm-hmm.
genuinely thinks, and also it's so hard to portray and write somebody who, to everybody else, feels really accomplished and good looking and what have you, but actually doubts himself.
Right. Right.
And which is true for, I think, a lot of people. Like, often you see interviews with actors or models or people who are considered to be attractive and successful, and sometimes you see an insecurity in them. And often I wonder that how real is that, or is that a performance, or and what have you. But sometimes you can see that, and you really see that in William Hurt's performance and this character, that like even in the end, when everybody is they're having layoffs and such, and he is asked to go to London and be a reporter or whatever over there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's only until Albert Brooks calls it that you're actually being promoted.
Right. Right.
He hadn't even realized that this is actually a promotion. So there's like so much nuance there. And then Holly Hunter's character, who's amazing at what she does, really takes everything so seriously, her colleagues, her relationships, but is also somebody who's often getting in her own way all the time,
Yes.
because
Right.
it's so difficult for her to let go and bring people in. It's just such a, I don't know, the complexities of human life, they're all on display. It's messy. And I think that's why this movie first hit me like a ton of bricks, not in a good way, perhaps, because when I saw her sitting in the room, like crying and disconnecting the telephone, and I was like, what is happening? Like, what is the
Yeah, and that
pacing
first
of this
scene, that's like
movie?
the intro to
Yeah,
her character, other
into
than
her
her as a
character.
child. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, this is so strange. And then of course, as the movie builds, you understand and you see all of it. So yeah, I could go on and on about this movie and its writing and how it's put together. It's kind of genius, I think.
It definitely is. And maybe it was because we were recording this episode so soon after the work ethic episode that we did. But I saw it through the lens this time I watched it around a lot like work. Like these are three people that are very, very good at what they do, but they're all unhappy in their own ways through the bulk of the film. And then at the end of the movie, when they have the coda and they sort of meet up a couple years later, you realize that Albert Brooks's character basically chose his family over the work. He left the Washington, D.C., goes to some office in Portland. He's like, my career doesn't need to give me joy. Like I want a family. He has a son. And that is really what's important to him in his life. And Hurt clearly went the other direction. Like he chose his career and that he's at the top of his game. You can tell his wife almost feels like a arm candy only. Like they don't really have a deep relationship, but he doesn't need it. Like he's getting all what he needs out of his career. And then Holly Hunter, I think, represents someone who can do both. Like she found that balance between, she's dating, she said, there's someone in her life, but she still is a very successful producer. She didn't give up on those dreams, but she was able to balance her life out better. And I was like, this is cool. Like, and they're all happy. There's not a judgment the movie saying, oh, William Hurt's bad because he chose work. And it's like, no, this is just people in their lives make choices, but what makes them happy. And each of them found that through their relationships with each other, and then the events that unfold in the main meat of the story. And you love that. The ending is so sweet in the sense of these are three people that, yes, they went through some troubles and tribulations, and there's a love triangle aspect of the film too, and all this, what have you, but they're all happy in their own ways at the end. And you're like, oh, this is great. You see these people from they're a kid, so you feel a little invested. You see them as children, and you're like, wow, this is great to see. They've all found happiness in their own ways through the prism of how they relate with work.
Yeah, but it's also not so tied in a bow either, because there's longing. There is that feeling of what could have been, from both the men, if they had ended up with her. And again, like with life, they're also unfulfilled dreams. Like you can see that glimmer in Albert Brooks's eyes that, oh, if I had stayed on the path that I was on, would I have been more successful? Would I have been happier in that sense? Did I settle? Same goes for Holly Hunter, that, yeah, she's successful, but there's that thing that these people are actually more settled in a way, especially Albert Brooks, who is married and has a child, and Holly Hunter is still dating, just on the process. And for a woman, that's like a different thing, the pressures of society and whatever you put on yourself, what have you. So yeah, there's a lot of like glass half full, glass half empty kind of thing. Also, I'm sure you know this, that there's a different ending that was shot.
I didn't know that. What's enlighten me and the listeners? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so basically, if I'm remembering it correctly, so there's this whole scene where she and William Hurt are supposed to go off on a holiday after the layoffs and everything, and that's when she finds out, thanks to Albert Brooks, that William Hurt's character had been disingenuous in creating that news report segment that he had produced about this rape victim or abuse victim person, and the tears in the eyes of William Hurt and such, and that really rubbed her the wrong way. So she shows up at the airport only to tell him that she's not going to come with him, and then gets in the cab to leave him.
Right.
And the alternate ending was that I think she goes back in, and they end up together, or something like that, or he comes back out, but they are together is sort of what the original ending was. But I actually love what they did.
Me too. Yeah.
There is this sense of kind of this lived, like, awkwardness and livedness in the three of them hanging out with Albert Brooks' son, who, by the way, looks exactly like him. I don't know where they found this kid. It's just hilarious to me.
Yeah.
So I love what they did with that, because, again, like I was saying, it's about the messiness of life. I don't think any of these people could have gotten together. Maybe they could have. I don't know. But this feels right to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're right in that there's a sense of, well, what could have been, but those are not desires. They're just thoughts, because all of them are happy in their lives. They're, you have sometimes you think back, oh, what if I'd done this? But you're not like guilt ridden, like, oh, I should have made this choice, or regret, or, oh my God, my life is, they all seem very happy with where they are. And that's what I like about that ending so much. And that definitely would have, and it ruined a lot of the film. I mean, what I think is, actually, this time I saw it, I was questioning, like, why does she care so much about him faking in that tear as I was watching the movie? And then I sort of, at the end, I was remembering, like, yeah, like, she was crying throughout the movie, and that was her way of showing genuine emotion, was her tears all the time throughout the film. There's multiple moments, like you said in the beginning, where she unplugs the phone and cries. She cries to herself at multiple moments in this film, because that is the way that she releases. So to her, tears are a very important expression of truth and her, what she's feeling. And for him to fake a tear to get sympathy from an audience for this news segment is a bigger betrayal than, I would be like, okay, fine. Like, you're faking a news story. Like, that happens, or not faking it. The news story is real, but you're faking your reaction. I mean, this happens all the time in media, and has forever, and will continue to do it. Like, it wouldn't bother me if I found that out from him. Like, that's not a deal breaker. But then at the end of the film, I realized, oh, for her, like, the crying, that act is very, very sacred to her because of what she's been doing throughout that film. So that is a bigger betrayal than it would be just to a normal person. Like, oh, you're crying. Like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, you're making the piece more interesting.
I didn't read it that way. I don't think she's even aware that crying to her is sort of, precious to her. To me, this is more about her work ethic. I think that for her, the purity and the truth of storytelling is so important. Like, even when he shows her the segment and it's like, did you like it? Did you like it? And people are crying in the room, and she's like, it was effective, not what I would have done, because it's too showy and there's no need to show you. It's about the story. She says that right up front.
She does.
She's very clear that this is just not authentic, true storytelling. And that sort of is the central conflict of the movie, where Albert Brooks and Holly Hunter, they're all about the purity of truth and all of that, versus this guy is all about the audience and what sells. And that's the central conflict, essentially. So yeah, that, to me, that's what I take from that.
Yeah, maybe it's just the age we live in now. If anyone was like, why you,
I know,
it's like, what are you, crazy? Like,
this is
of
what
course
we
you
live
have
in
to
now.
This is but news has always been like this. So you have to put some little spin on it, because the point of news is to inform someone, and you want to think of your audience. Getting back to the film again, even though it did I had it sort of higher on my reverence for it. On this watch, it fell a little, but it still is just it's a masterwork and a film that is very hard to put into a box of like what it really is. It's just a story of three people in their lives and what happens. Yeah, you can say it's a romantic comedy. There's actually a lot of, I love the scenes where they're the composers are trying to come up with a theme song for the news, and they use that again during the closing credits. But those scenes, I was like laughing out. They're so funny. But yet there's also scenes in this movie that are just like really hard, not hard to watch, but like very emotionally powerful. Like when Albert Brooks and her having that argument where he's basically saying, I love you, why are you going to this guy, and saying horrible and mean things to her. But it's a very very truthful. I felt that scene was very truthful. So this movie, you can't really put in a genre box. I think it's broadcast news. That's all you can really say. This is just broadcast news.
It's life film, you know?
Yeah, life. Yeah, right. It's life. Yeah.
To me, I mean, the whole thing of when Albert Brooks decides to be the anchor of the news show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And he's sweating
and bullets.
Yeah.
The whole sign of the news behind is like dangling and moving, and
yeah,
towel rolls and all of it. And then his reaction when she comes back from the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he's just like laughing and I find that so relatable when something has gone so bad that all you can do is just laugh. And he's like, well, at least I lost 40 pounds.
And and sweat.
People were calling in for my well-being. Like, it's just, again, so hilarious and heartbreaking all at the same time. So what made this movie come down a little bit for you?
I don't know. I guess in my memory of it was more of like, oh, this is like a 5-star film was in my memory. And then I watched, I was like, yeah, it's very good, but it just didn't hit me the same way. So yeah, I can't explain it other than that. I think maybe my memory of it was that it was a much more effective, or maybe when I saw it at that time as like a 20-something-year-old, it just hit me a lot harder than it does now as an older guy who, I don't know, but I get it. I'm not saying the film, I didn't like it at all. I just, it was like a 5-star film in my memory. And now it's more like a 3.5 or something out of 5.
It's interesting. Yeah. To me, like, this movie just grows as I grow older. So it's almost like the opposite.
Yeah.
Which we've actually noted several times on this podcast.
Yes, exactly.
This happens with us.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.